Tensions are high in Los Angeles after 2,000 National Guard troops were deployed to quell protests sparked by immigration raids. Now, it is a move that has put LA squarely at the centre of the Trump administration's controversial immigration crackdown. The White House claiming the protests are an insurrection against the US. Troops have been stationed across various locations, dressed in tactical gear and holding firearms in front of armoured vehicles. The National Guard, a military-trained special operations unit, is rarely deployed in the US, particularly without the support of the state governor. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has accused the president of purposefully exacerbating the situation. Donald Trump is standing firm.
Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden. I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. It's about law and order.
Let's get more on this now. Andrew Seele is the president of the Migration Policy Institute and he joins us from Washington. Andrew, thank you for your time. What have we seen unfold over the weekend? I mean, this really escalated quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, Gemma, I don't think any of us were expecting this. This was a very fast escalation. That we did see an increase in the kinds of enforcement, immigration enforcement that the Trump administration was doing. They've increased slightly over time, but it hasn't been a dramatic increase. But this looks like a really scaling up of what they're doing. And for the first time in a large scale, targeting lots of businesses where they believe that people without documents are employed. And they did it in a city that is known to be quite friendly to the immigrant communities, have a large immigrant population, and where there's a lot of resistance to them doing large-scale raids. And then suddenly the reaction from the White House was to send the National Guard without normally in the U.S., the National Guard is only called when a state governor asks for it. The national government, the president can do it, but that hasn't happened since 1965. So this is a big escalation, and we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, and those state and federal tensions on display there. We've heard some of what Gavin Newsom, California's governor, had to say about this, that the National Guard has been deployed to manufacture a crisis. What else have you seen in terms of reaction to this?
I think this is, I have a sense that the immigration crackdown that President Trump has been doing is somewhat popular. The polls tell us this. It's marginally popular, but just over half the population approves. But only as long as they think that people are going after criminals primarily. This begins to look like large-scale raids against, people who are hardworking, and the use of military tactics to go after people, or at least to guard the civilian agents that are going after them. The National Guard will not be involved in detaining immigrants. They're only there to protect other agencies that are involved in the actual immigration raids. But I have a feeling this may not turn out to be very popular. I mean, we're not used to seeing soldiers on the streets in the United States. This has happened in very rare occasions, and this is a quick escalation, and I think we have to see what happens in public reaction, and maybe that will eventually lead to some sort of step down on one side or the other.
And going to the protest there in reaction to the arrests made by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE officers, can you tell us a bit more about what is playing out on the ground over there under Trump?
As far as we can tell, there are a number of groups. So they've started, we had seen some labor raids, some workplace raids in Florida and a few isolated other places. This was the first time we began to see this as a major line of action of ICE. This is happening this weekend, literally, and they did it in multiple workplaces. And what happened is there were a number of organizations that, started sending out alerts and got people to go out and protest where the raids were happening. And some of them were simply peacefully protesting on the side, but in some cases they did try to impede the officers moving away with people in the trucks. And that's where the confrontation started to happen. And it's not quite sure who started it, but things got heated very quickly on both sides.
We're seeing these pictures play out at the moment. Trump has promised mass deportations across the country. What is the goal? What rights does he want to strip away, and will this happen?
So he's been talking about deporting 1 million people a year. Some of his aides have been saying that there's probably somewhere around 14 million people in the United States who are sort of fit into a category of people without documents. Perhaps 3 to 4 million have some temporary right to stay in the country, but that's still 10, 11 million people that really are subject to deportation. He said that he wants to deport 1 million people a year. So far, they've really struggled to get big numbers. It turns out to be very hard to find people that are deeply integrated in American society. But they do seem to be, as of this weekend, starting to pull together a number of different law enforcement agencies. ICE is leading, but other law enforcement agencies were present. And it looks like they may be starting to get bigger numbers of people detained. And early on, they were mostly getting people with criminal records that they were detaining and sending back to their countries of origin. Now it looks like they're going after people who don't have criminal records, who they find working without legal documents to be working. And look, I don't think they'll get to 1 million a year, but I do think we're seeing a real escalation in the numbers. And I think this is, it remains to be seen whether this will be a popular policy or not, especially with the National Guard being called out into the streets.